Ever wonder how some gardens stay green when everything else wilts? The Amish cracked that code a long time ago. Through smart shade planning, water-stretching tricks, and chicken-powered soil prep, they've turned summer heat from a threat into an advantage. Their methods aren't flashy, but they work like magic. Walk into any modern garden center and you'll hear the same advice over and over. Full sun, full sun, full sun. 8 hours minimum, they say. The Amish? They're shaking their heads at this obsession with blasting everything with sunlight from dawn to dusk. These people figured out something most gardeners miss completely. Summer heat doesn't just make plants grow faster. Past a certain point, it starts cooking them alive. When temperatures climb above 85 degrees, many vegetables go into survival mode instead of producing food. They stop making tomatoes and start making plans to escape. That's why Amish gardeners spend their winter months doing something that might seem backwards. They map out shadows, not just where the sun hits, but where it doesn't. They know exactly which spots get morning light, but afternoon shade. They track how that big oak tree's shadow moves across the yard as the months change. By spring, they have a shadow calendar that's more detailed than most people's work schedules. Here's where it gets smart. Those shadowy spots aren't treated like garden failures. They're prime real estate for specific crops. Lettuce gets planted where it'll catch morning sun, but hide from the brutal afternoon heat. Spinach goes in areas that stay cool when the rest of the garden feels like a pizza oven. Even plants need air conditioning. They just use leaves instead of electricity bills. And unlike your house AC, nobody complains about the temperature setting. The timing matters too. While other gardeners watch their lettuce turn bitter and bolt to seed in July heat, Amish gardens are still producing crisp salads. Their leafy greens stay sweet and tender because they're not getting sunburned every day. A single row of lettuce planted in partial shade can produce fresh leaves for 3 months longer than the same variety baking in full sun. But shade planting goes deeper than just hiding vegetables from heat. Cool areas create different growing zones, right in the same garden. Near that shaded lettuce, the soil stays moist longer. Beneficial insects hang out there during hot days. Even the air temperature can be 10 to 15 degrees cooler just a few feet away from direct sun. This approach turns a garden into a neighborhood with different climates. Hot zones for peppers and tomatoes that love to sweat. Medium zones for most vegetables. Cool zones for delicate crops that wilt under pressure. Instead of fighting the weather, they work with it. Each plant gets exactly what it needs to thrive, not what the seed packet says it should want. The results speak for themselves. While suburban gardens struggle through heat waves, Amish families are still harvesting fresh vegetables when everyone else has given up until fall. Their secret isn't better seeds or more water. It's understanding that sometimes the best thing you can give a plant is a little shade to rest in. And when August arrives with its scorching temperatures, those carefully planned shadows become the difference between a garden that survives and one that keeps producing food for the family table. But even the best shade won't help if your plants are dying of thirst. Most people see an Amish rain barrel and think they figured out the whole water story. Wrong. That barrel sitting next to the house is like seeing the tip of an iceberg and assuming that's all there is underneath. The real magic happens before that rainwater ever touches a vegetable. Amish families don't just collect water, they clean it. Not with fancy filters or chemicals, but with something that's been working for thousands of years. Rocks and gravel. They dig shallow pits near their collection areas and fill them with layers of different-sized stones. Rainwater gets poured through these natural filters, which grab dirt, leaves, and anything else that shouldn't be feeding tomatoes. But here's where it gets interesting. Some families take this underground, literally. They build clay cisterns that can hold hundreds of gallons beneath the ground where temperatures stay cool and evaporation can't steal their precious water supply. These underground tanks keep water fresh for months, even through the hottest summers. The delivery system is just as clever. While modern gardeners blast their plants with high-pressure hoses, Amish gardeners use hand-pumped sprayers that give just the right amount of water exactly where it's needed. No water hits the leaves where it can cause disease. No excess soaks areas that don't need it. Every drop has a purpose. Water conservation among the Amish is so serious, they treat wasted water like spilled milk. Except milk doesn't determine whether the family eats vegetables this winter. During dry spells, this system really shines. One typical Amish family can save over 300 gallons of water each week using these methods. That's enough to keep a large garden thriving when their neighbors are watching their plants wilt and wondering if they should give up gardening altogether. The hand pump approach does something else that electric sprinklers can't. It forces you to pay attention. When you're pumping every drop by hand, you notice which plants really need water and which ones are just being dramatic. You spot problems before they become disasters. You learn your garden like a parent learns their child's moods. This careful water management creates gardens that laugh at drought conditions. While municipal water restrictions leave suburban gardens gasping, Amish vegetables keep growing strong on nothing but what falls from the sky, properly collected and wisely used. Of course, all the water in the world won't save plants from their worst enemies. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. Every spring, something fascinating happens in Amish gardens that would make most modern gardeners scratch their heads. While their neighbors are carefully spacing plants apart, like they might catch something contagious from each other, Amish families are deliberately crowding certain plants together like old friends at a reunion. This isn't random. 3 generations of trial and error taught them which plants make the best neighbors and which ones should never share the same patch of dirt. The famous corn, beans, and squash trio gets all the attention in gardening books, but that's kindergarten stuff compared to what really happens in these gardens. Walk through an Amish vegetable patch in July, and you'll spot basil plants tucked between tomato rows like green bodyguards. Those aromatic leaves aren't there to make Capri salad easier to harvest. They're working overtime as natural pest control that never takes a day off. Hornworms, those fat green caterpillars that can strip a tomato plant bare overnight, absolutely despise the smell of fresh basil. So do aphids, whiteflies, and most other bugs that consider tomatoes a 5-star dining experience. The dill and cucumber partnership tells an even cleverer story. Cucumber beetles use their sense of smell like a GPS system to locate their favorite plants. But when dill is growing nearby, those beetles get completely confused. It's like trying to follow directions when someone's blasting loud music right next to your ear. The overwhelming scent of dill masks the cucumber smell so well that beetles often give up and go bother someone else's garden instead. Companion planting in Amish gardens works like a neighborhood watch program, except instead of keeping an eye out for burglars, plants are protecting each other from bugs, sharing nutrients, and making sure everyone gets what they need to thrive. But the real genius shows up in combinations most people never consider. Chives planted in rings around roses don't just create a pretty border. Those onion-scented leaves release compounds that make aphids pack up and leave. Marigolds scattered throughout vegetable beds do double duty, producing chemicals from their roots that kill harmful soil creatures while their bright flowers attract beneficial insects that eat garden pests. Nasturtiums serve as the ultimate sacrifice plants. These colorful flowers are so irresistible to cucumber beetles and squash bugs that they'll ignore the actual food crops completely. It's like offering candy to kids and watching them forget about vegetables. The nasturtiums get munched, but the cucumbers and squash stay healthy and productive. Every plant partnership in an Amish garden serves at least 2 purposes, sometimes 3 or 4. Those beans spiraling up corn stalks aren't just saving space. The beans grab nitrogen from the air and pump it directly into the soil where corn roots can use it as fertilizer. The corn provides the strong support that beans need to climb towards sunlight. Meanwhile, the squash leaves spread out below like a living mulch, blocking weeds and keeping soil moisture from evaporating. Nothing gets planted just because it's attractive or fashionable. If a plant can't defend something, feed something, or produce something useful, it doesn't earn real estate in an Amish garden. This practical approach creates gardens that practically manage themselves, with plants handling pest control, soil improvement, and space efficiency without any help from sprays or store-bought fertilizers. But even the smartest plant partnerships need healthy soil to really thrive. The sound of a rototiller churning through garden soil has become the unofficial soundtrack of spring in most neighborhoods. That mechanical roaring and grinding as metal blades hack through dirt, turning everything upside down like a tornado hit underground. Amish gardeners hear that noise from their neighbors' yards and wonder why anyone would want to destroy something that took all winter to build. Soil isn't just dirt. It's a living city with more residents per square inch than most actual cities have per square mile. Earthworms tunnel through, creating highways for water and air. Beneficial bacteria and fungi form networks that help plant roots find nutrients. Tiny creatures break down organic matter and turn it into plant food. When a rototiller tears through this underground community, it's like running a bulldozer through downtown during rush hour. Amish families learned generations ago that the best gardens come from soil that never gets turned. Instead of digging and churning, they layer fresh compost and straw on top of their beds every season. The earthworms and soil creatures take care of mixing everything together naturally. No gas engines required, no backbreaking digging, no destroying the delicate underground networks that took months to establish. This layering method works like nature intended. In forests, nobody tills the ground between trees, yet those forests grow bigger and stronger every year. Leaves fall, decay, and feed the soil from above. The same process happens in no-till Amish gardens, just with compost and straw instead of fallen leaves. Traditional gardeners work harder than a one-legged cat in a sandbox, digging and tilling every spring. Meanwhile, Amish gardeners just spread some compost and let the worms do the heavy lifting. The worms work for free and never complain about overtime. The results speak louder than any rototiller engine. No-till soil stays moist longer because all those earthworm tunnels and organic matter act like tiny sponges. Plant roots grow deeper and stronger in soil that hasn't been chopped up and disturbed. The beneficial microbes that help plants resist diseases thrive in undisturbed ground. When summer heat waves arrive, no-till gardens laugh at the weather while tilled gardens struggle. The organic matter holds moisture like a bank account holds money, releasing it slowly when plants need it most. Soil temperatures stay cooler because that layer of mulch acts like a blanket protecting everything underneath. This method also saves enormous amounts of time and energy. No spring tilling sessions that leave gardeners sore for days. No fighting with mechanical equipment that breaks down at the worst possible moments. Just spread organic matter, plant seeds, and let nature handle the rest. But there's another workforce in Amish gardens that makes this system even more effective. Raised beds dominate every gardening magazine and YouTube channel these days. Higher is better, they claim. Better drainage, easier access, warmer soil for faster growth. Amish gardeners looked at this trend and decided to go the opposite direction entirely. When dealing with crops that drink water like thirsty teenagers gulp soda, they dig down instead of building up. The concept flips conventional wisdom upside down. Instead of mounding soil 8 to 12 inches above ground level, Amish families create growing areas that sit 6 to 8 inches below the surrounding surface. These sunken beds turn physics into their gardening assistant. Water naturally flows toward the lowest point instead of running off raised surfaces during heavy rains or irrigation. The design works like a shallow bathtub that's been filled with premium soil. When rain falls or water gets applied, it collects in these lowered areas and soaks slowly into the root zone instead of running away to lower ground. During dry spells, this collected moisture keeps plants happy while raised beds dry out and need constant watering. But the real magic happens when hot summer winds start blowing. Those same winds that can desiccate raised bed plants barely touch crops growing in sunken areas. The lowered surface creates a microclimate that's several degrees cooler and significantly more humid than the surrounding area. Plants that would wilt in raised beds during heat waves keep growing strong in these protected depressions. Sunken beds work on the same principle as hiding in a basement during a tornado. Sometimes the best protection comes from going down instead of up. Except instead of avoiding flying debris, plants are dodging hot winds and water loss. The mulching potential of sunken beds multiplies their effectiveness. A thick layer of straw or wood chips spread across the lowered surface creates an even deeper reservoir for moisture retention. The mulch also insulates soil temperatures, keeping roots cooler during blazing summer days and preventing the rapid temperature swings that stress plants. Crops like squash, melons, cucumbers, and zucchini absolutely thrive in these moisture-rich environments. These plants naturally produce large leaves and heavy fruits that demand consistent water supplies. In raised beds, they often struggle and produce smaller harvests. In sunken beds, they grow so vigorously that harvesting becomes the main challenge instead of keeping plants alive. The construction requires more initial work than simply building raised frames, but the long-term benefits make that effort worthwhile. Less watering, healthier plants, bigger harvests, and crops that can handle weather extremes without constant intervention. The sunken design also integrates perfectly with mulching strategies that take water conservation even further. Most people keep chickens for eggs and meat. Smart thinking, but Amish families discovered these feathered creatures earn their keep in ways that would make any landscaping crew jealous. During the off-season, when garden beds sit empty and waiting for spring, flocks of chickens turn into the most efficient soil preparation team money can't buy. The job description for these feathered employees includes pest control, fertilization, and soil aeration all rolled into one. Chickens spend their days scratching through dirt with the dedication of treasure hunters looking for buried gold. What they're actually hunting are grubs, larvae, and other soil-dwelling pests that would normally become next year's garden problems. Every bug they find and eat is one less pest that will attack growing vegetables. While they're hunting for insects, chickens naturally scratch and peck at the soil surface. This gentle scratching breaks up any compacted areas without destroying the underground networks that no-till gardening works so hard to preserve. It's like having tiny rototillers that run on corn and kitchen scraps instead of gasoline, except these living machines improve the soil instead of destroying it. The fertilizer they leave behind comes perfectly packaged and ready to use. Unlike chemical fertilizers that can burn plants or fresh manure that needs time to decompose, chicken droppings provide exactly the right kind of slow-release nutrients that vegetables love. Each chicken produces about 30 pounds of high-quality fertilizer every year, and it gets distributed exactly where the chickens spend their time scratching around. Chickens work harder than most teenagers with summer jobs. They show up every day, never call in sick, and the only payment they demand is food and a safe place to sleep. Plus, they actually produce something valuable instead of just texting all day. The timing works perfectly with garden cycles. During fall and winter, when beds are empty, chickens have free run of the entire garden area. They clean up any plant debris that might harbor diseases or pests, hunt down overwintering insects, and steadily improve the soil with their natural activities. By spring, garden beds are pest-free, well-fertilized, and perfectly prepared for planting. One typical flock of 12 chickens can completely prepare a large garden bed in just 2 weeks. They work quietly, never break down like mechanical equipment, and actually become more valuable over time as they continue laying eggs throughout their garden work. The whole system runs on kitchen scraps, garden waste, and whatever bugs the chickens can find. This living soil preparation method creates gardens that start each season with fewer pest problems, richer soil, and better structure for plant roots to thrive. The chickens handle 3 separate jobs that most gardeners pay for or do by hand, and they do it better than any machine or chemical treatment could manage. But even perfectly prepared soil needs the right growing conditions to reach its full potential. Drive past any garden center in spring and you'll see the same scene repeated dozens of times. Gardeners loading their trucks with identical bales of golden straw like everyone agreed on the same uniform for their vegetable beds. Amish families watch this ritual with quiet amusement because they learned long ago that the best mulch is usually the cheapest mulch, and it's rarely what the stores are selling. The secret lies in understanding that different materials do different jobs throughout the growing season. Straw works beautifully in early spring when soil needs to warm up gradually, but by midsummer, that same straw can become a fire hazard during dry spells. Wood chips excel at suppressing weeds, but take years to break down into soil improvement. Pine needles create acidic conditions that some plants love and others despise. Smart Amish gardeners match their mulch to their crops like they're arranging marriages between materials and plants. Tomatoes and peppers get wood chips around their base because these heat-loving plants benefit from the slow decomposition that gradually warms the soil. Leafy greens receive grass clippings that break down quickly and release nitrogen for fast growth. The sourcing strategy would make any budget-conscious person proud. Instead of buying expensive bags of decorative mulch, Amish families gather materials from their own property and surrounding area. Fall leaves get raked and stored for spring use. Tree pruning produces piles of small branches that get chipped or chopped for pathway mulch. Even the sawdust from woodworking projects finds its way into garden beds where it slowly improves soil structure. Hay that's gotten too old for animal feed doesn't get wasted. It becomes premium garden mulch that contains seeds from grasses and clover, which actually improves the soil when they sprout and get worked in. Shredded bark from storm-damaged trees provides long-lasting weed control that looks attractive and costs nothing but collection time. Amish gardeners treat mulch shopping like extreme couponing. They spend $0 and still end up with more materials than people who drop $50 at the garden center. The difference is they know where to look and when to gather. The seasonal switching strategy maximizes each material's strengths while minimizing its weaknesses. Spring starts with light-colored materials like straw that reflect heat and allow soil to warm gradually. Summer brings darker mulches that absorb morning heat but insulate against afternoon temperature extremes. Fall applications focus on materials that will decompose over winter and enrich the soil for next year's crops. This rotating mulch system creates gardens that stay cooler in summer, warmer in spring, and continuously improve their soil fertility. Weed problems become almost non-existent because fresh mulch gets applied before weeds can establish themselves. Watering needs drop dramatically because moisture stays trapped beneath the protective organic layer. The end result is gardens that practically mulch themselves as materials break down and get replaced with fresh organic matter. But even the best mulching system needs consistent nutrition to keep plants producing at their peak potential. The smell hits you first. Rich, earthy, and definitely not something you'd want as air freshener. But to an Amish gardener, that pungent aroma rising from old barrels and buckets means liquid gold is brewing. While their neighbors spend hundreds of dollars on store-bought fertilizers with fancy labels and chemical formulas, Amish families create their own plant food from materials most people throw away or burn. Nettle leaves that sting bare skin get transformed into nitrogen-rich plant fuel. Comfrey plants with their deep tap roots become potassium powerhouses when soaked in water for weeks. Even fresh manure, properly aged and diluted, turns into gentle liquid nutrition that won't burn tender plant roots like harsh chemical fertilizers can. The brewing process couldn't be simpler. Old barrels, plastic buckets, or even metal containers get filled with organic materials and rainwater. The mixture sits in a sunny spot for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the ingredients and desired strength. Occasional stirring helps the decomposition process, though the smell during stirring sessions tests everyone's commitment to organic gardening. Making compost tea creates the same enthusiasm as opening a week-old lunch bag forgotten in a hot car. The smell makes strong-grown men walk away quickly, but the plants absolutely love what comes out of those stinky barrels. The timing of applications matters more than most gardeners realize. Early morning or late evening feedings work best because plants can absorb liquid nutrients before hot sun causes rapid evaporation. Every 2 weeks throughout the growing season keeps vegetables supplied with steady nutrition without the feast or famine cycle that chemical fertilizers create. Different plants get different strength mixtures. Tomatoes and peppers, which are heavy feeders, receive full-strength liquid fertilizer that's dark brown and potent. Leafy greens get diluted versions that provide gentle nutrition without forcing excessive leaf growth at the expense of flavor. Root crops like carrots and beets get light applications that encourage development without creating oversized woody vegetables. The cost comparison makes store-bought fertilizers look like highway robbery. One batch of homemade liquid fertilizer, made from free materials, can feed an entire garden for a month. The same nutrition from bagged fertilizer would cost more than most families spend on groceries in a week. Plus, organic liquid feeds improve soil structure and support beneficial microorganisms, while chemical fertilizers often damage soil biology over time. Application methods stay simple but effective. Watering cans, old milk jugs with holes punched in the caps, or hand-pumped sprayers deliver the liquid nutrition directly to plant root zones. No complicated injection systems or expensive equipment required. The plants respond with vigorous growth, deeper green color, and increased production that continues throughout the growing season. This liquid feeding system works perfectly with the timing strategies that maximize harvest potential throughout the summer months. Traditional gardening advice treats planting like a military operation. One weekend in spring, everything goes in the ground at once. Rows of identical seeds planted on the same day, expected to mature together in one glorious harvest celebration. Amish families tried this approach generations ago and quickly realized it creates more problems than vegetables. The disaster scenario plays out the same way every year in conventional gardens. 3 weeks of perfect weather produces bumper crops that all ripen simultaneously. Suddenly, families face mountains of tomatoes, endless zucchini, and more green beans than they can process, preserve, or give away to increasingly reluctant neighbors. Half the harvest gets wasted while gardeners frantically search for recipes that use 40 pounds of cucumbers. Amish gardeners solved this feast or famine problem with a simple scheduling trick that spreads harvests across months instead of cramming everything into overwhelming weeks. They plant small amounts of the same crops every 10 to 15 days throughout the growing season. This creates a continuous conveyor belt of fresh vegetables instead of avalanches of produce that spoil before anyone can use them. The system works like a well-planned assembly line. The first lettuce planting produces salads, while the second planting is still sprouting. By the time the initial crop starts going to seed in summer heat, fresh young plants are ready to take over production. This overlapping schedule ensures families enjoy fresh lettuce from early spring through late fall instead of just a few weeks in May. Weather insurance comes built into staggered planting without any extra cost or effort. Late spring frosts that kill early plantings leave later sowings untouched and ready to fill the gap. Summer heat waves that stress mature plants barely affect younger crops that haven't reached their vulnerable stages yet. Pest outbreaks that devastate one generation of plants often miss the next planting entirely. Staggered planting works like having multiple insurance policies on the same house. When disaster strikes one crop, there are always backup plants waiting in the wings. Much more reliable than putting all your garden eggs in one seasonal basket. The harvest timing creates a sustainable rhythm that matches family food processing capabilities. Instead of spending entire weekends canning tomatoes until midnight, preservation work gets spread across manageable daily sessions. Small batches of vegetables ripen continuously, allowing families to maintain steady supplies of fresh food without overwhelming kitchen marathons. Root crops like carrots, beets, and radishes benefit enormously from staggered planting because they can be harvested at optimal sizes instead of growing woody and tough while waiting their turn. Leafy greens maintain tenderness and flavor when replaced regularly with fresh plantings rather than trying to keep the same plants productive through changing seasons. This continuous planting approach requires more attention to scheduling and record keeping than plant everything at once methods, but the benefits far outweigh the extra planning effort. Steady harvests, reduced waste, better quality vegetables, and built-in weather protection create gardens that produce reliably regardless of seasonal challenges. However, even the most carefully timed plantings need proper infrastructure to support continuous production. Most gardeners treat pathways like necessary evils, dead zones between productive beds that serve no purpose except keeping muddy feet from trampling vegetables. These utilitarian strips get covered with gravel, wood chips, or left as bare dirt that turns into sticky mud every time it rains. Amish families discovered that pathways can work just as hard as vegetable beds if designed with the same intelligence. The transformation starts with living ground cover instead of lifeless materials. Thick grass, white clover, or mixed plantings turn walking areas into productive spaces that contribute to overall garden health rather than just consuming valuable real estate. These living pathways create their own ecosystems that support the vegetable beds they connect. Clover pathways perform double duty as nitrogen factories. While people walk on the surface, clover roots work underground, forming partnerships with bacteria that pull nitrogen from the air and store it in root nodules. When pathway clippings get added to compost piles or spread directly around vegetables, They carry concentrated nitrogen that feeds plants better than many commercial fertilizers. Grass pathways create their own maintenance cycle that saves work instead of creating it. Regular foot traffic keeps grass at the perfect height without any mowing equipment. The compressed soil beneath pathways becomes firm and stable, preventing the muddy mess that bare earth creates during wet weather. Even heavy rains drain quickly through established grass root systems instead of creating puddles and runoff. Garden pathways covered with living plants work harder than most teenagers with summer jobs. They produce fertilizer, prevent erosion, stay clean in all weather, and never ask for raises or vacation time. Much more reliable than hiring actual help. The cooling effect of living pathways extends into adjacent vegetable beds. Grass and clover surfaces stay significantly cooler than bare soil or gravel during hot summer days. This temperature moderation helps nearby plant roots avoid heat stress and reduces water evaporation from vegetable beds. The pathways essentially create air conditioning zones throughout the garden. Maintenance becomes part of the garden's production cycle rather than extra work. Grass clippings from pathway trimming get spread directly onto vegetable beds as fresh mulch. Clover flowers attract beneficial insects that help with pollination and pest control. Even the root systems of pathway plants improve soil structure and water infiltration in the entire garden area. The aesthetic benefits happen naturally without any additional effort. Living pathways stay green and attractive throughout the growing season, while gravel paths collect weeds and wood chip paths fade to gray. The contrast between lush green walkways and productive vegetable beds creates gardens that look professionally maintained without professional maintenance costs. This integrated approach turns every square foot of garden space into a contributor rather than just a consumer, creating self-sustaining systems that become more productive and beautiful with each passing season. A truly self-sustaining summer garden doesn't come from gadgets or chemicals, it comes from knowing when to plant, where to shade, and how to listen to the land. The Amish have been doing it quietly for generations.